Imagine being told that in order to literally save humanity and reach the state of perfect utopian harmony, we have to completely abandon basically everything that makes society work. I'm talking about discarding morality.
Just entirely throwing it out.
Right, tearing up the concept of nations, dissolving the traditional family structure, and even, and this is wild, letting go of the concept of truth itself.
Yeah, which, to most of us anyway, sounds like an absolute recipe for chaos.
Completely. It sounds like the fastest way to tear civilization down to the studs.
Definitely. But according to one sweeping, highly specific philosophical text from May 2012, abandoning all of those foundational constructs is actually the only way we survive.
It's fascinating. So welcome to this deep dive. Today we are bringing you along on a journey to unpack a really intriguing text written by a figure named Xuefeng. It's titled Sensibility, Rationality, Intellectuality, and Spirituality.
Quite a mouthful, but yeah.
Yeah, it is. But it offers this massive, comprehensive roadmap of human consciousness. It basically covers everything from lost ancient continents all the way to this proposed post-ideological future.
It really is a remarkable document to navigate because it essentially challenges the listener to completely rethink the metrics we use to, define human progress.
Right. And as your guides today, our mission is to impartially explore these profound and frankly very cosmic claims about human evolution.
Absolutely impart your.
Right. We aren't here to take a side. We're not endorsing the utopian visions, and we're not trying to debunk the wilder claims either. We just want to objectively look at this unique worldview and figure out if there are practical nuggets of insight hidden within it.
Because regardless of how you feel about lost continents, the way this text frames how humans interact with the world around them is just deeply thought-provoking.
It really is. So if you are ready to rethink the history of human awareness, okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it. And to really grasp where this author, Xuefeng, wants to take humanity in the future, we have to understand his very specific version of where we've been.
The history lesson.
Exactly. The text sets up this 37,000-year historical timeline.
Okay, I have to pause you right there, because as I was reading this source material, my alarm bells started ringing almost immediately.
Oh, I know exactly what you're going to say.
Right. The author grounds this timeline by citing another work, and he specifically mentions Mr. Struck the Monster,
Yeah.
and a text called The Mysteries of Life Series, Extraterrestrial Civilization Contact Volume. And as a listener trying to take this seriously, I'm thinking, Shuck the Monster. Extraterrestrial contact.
That's a lot to take in at first glance.
It is. How is the author expecting us to engage with this timeline? Is this meant to be literal anthropology?
Well, it's a great question, and it's honestly the first major hurdle for anyone reading this text. If you approach this expecting peer-reviewed archaeology, you're going to get completely derailed.
Right. You'll just bounce right off it.
Exactly. In the context of this philosophy, the timeline functions more like a profound framing device. Whether it's literal or allegorical, the author is basically using these eras to describe the evolution of a single central operating system for human consciousness.
Okay, an operating system. I like that analogy.
Yeah, so he lays out 4 distinct eras. And the first takes us way back 37,000 years ago to a continent in the Indian Ocean called Lemuria.
Right, and according to Xuefeng, the civilization of Lemuria was centered entirely around what he calls sensibility.
Yes. And sensibility here doesn't mean being polite or having emotional intelligence.
It's more literal than that.
Much more. It is defined strictly as feeling nature. It's a very raw, unmediated sensory connection to the universe. You are simply experiencing the environment without trying to change it at all.
But obviously, we don't live in Lemuria anymore.
No, we don't.
So what forced the change? I mean, if it was so deeply connected, why didn't we just stay in that era of sensibility forever?
Because eventually, just feeling nature isn't enough to survive it. Feeling the rain is a pure sensory experience, but it doesn't build a roof over your head.
The environment pushes back.
Exactly. The environment pushes back. So humanity had to adapt its operating system to cope with basic survival.
Which brings us to the second era. About 10,000 years ago, we hit the Atlantis period.
Right.
And here, the operating system shifts from sensibility to rationality. We stop just feeling nature and we start understanding and organizing it.
We build agriculture. We build
Let's
structures.
organize things, yeah.
Exactly. Rationality is basically the imposition of order. But then, causality strikes again. Once you have a roof over your head and your basic survival is handled by organizing nature, what happens next?
You get bored.
Kind of. You get curious about the deeper mechanics. Organizing isn't enough anymore. You want to know the underlying physics of the roof.
And that launches us into the third era. The text argues that for the 10,000 years following Atlantis, which basically covers all of recent recorded human history, right?
Yep, up to modern day.
The focus shifted to intellectuality. This is defined as knowing and comprehending nature. It's the era of the scientific method.
Deep philosophical inquiry.
Yeah, dissecting the world down to the atom.
And here's where the text gets critical. The author argues that this era, too, has reached its breaking point.
Oh, for sure.
He says we have become paralyzed by our own intellectuality. We overthink everything, and in doing so, we've basically lost the actual connection to the world we're studying.
Which sets the stage for the pivot. The text points to a transition that supposedly began after the year 2013, ushering in what Xuefeng calls the future Lifechanyuan era.
The fourth and final stage.
Right, spirituality, which is defined as approaching nature flexibly and dynamically.
Yeah, the shift from knowing to flowing.
The shift from knowing to flowing, I like that, but I'm trying to wrap my head around that specific transition from intellectuality to spirituality. Is it sort of like the process of learning an instrument?
Okay, walk me through that.
Well, think of a kid who just discovers a piano and starts banging on the keys.
Yeah,
that sensibility, right? Just feeling the vibration.
Exactly, just raw sensory input. There's no structure yet at all.
Right. Then what happens? They start taking lessons. They learn sheet music, time signatures, scales.
They put the sound into boxes.
Yeah, that's your Atlantis phase. That's rationality.
Right.
And then they get really advanced. They go to Juilliard. They study complex music theory, chord progressions, the physics of acoustics. They deeply comprehend the underlying mechanics of the music. That's intellectuality.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
They know the music inside and out, but they are still completely bound by the sheet music. They're constantly thinking about the rules while they play.
Which makes spirituality the jazz master, the virtuoso who walks onto the stage and just throws the sheet music out the window.
Yes.
They aren't thinking about the theory or the scales anymore. They are just improvising fluidly. They are approaching the music flexibly and dynamically.
What's fascinating here is how that analogy really highlights the absolute core argument of Xuefeng's text. Because notice what isn't in your musical analogy and what isn't in his historical timeline.
Oh, right, like technology.
Exactly. He isn't measuring human progress by the invention of the wheel or the steam engine or who won which war. The entire metric for the rise and evolution of human civilization is exclusively about how humanity processes and interacts with nature.
That really is the crux of it all. The common thread running through all four of those stages, the feeling, the organizing, the knowing, and the flowing, is what he translates as nature.
And we have to be extremely precise here, because when you and I, or the listener, hear the word nature, we usually picture, trees, birds, maybe national park.
A nice hike. Yeah.
Right. But that is not what this text means at all.
Not at all. The author places immense weight on the root meaning of the Chinese character for nature, which is yi. And he is very strict about this.
Oh, very strict.
He explicitly tells the reader, do not bother looking this up in a standard modern dictionary. He claims that Chinese culture and its characters were divinely created, so you have to look past modern definitions and examine the direct root essence of the word.
Yeah, he elevates his concept of nature to the ultimate, inescapable building block of reality. The text literally states, the universe is nature.
Everything possesses it.
Exactly. There is mountain nature, water nature, human nature, demon nature, Buddha nature. It is the fundamental essence of all existence.
He even ties this directly into the origins of Zen Buddhism to drive the point home, which I thought was super interesting. He references this famous story about Shakyamuni, the Buddha.
Oh, right, the flower sermon.
Yeah. The story goes that the Buddha was giving a sermon, but instead of speaking a single word, he simply held up a flower.
Just stood there holding it.
Exactly. And the entire audience was baffled, except for one disciple, Kashyapa, who just smiled.
And that silent transmission of understanding outside of words, totally outside of intellectuality, is considered the origin of Zen Buddhism.
Right. And Xuefeng traces that lineage down to Bodhidharma, the first Zen patriarch in China who taught a very specific maxim. Buddha is nature, and nature is Buddha.
Meaning, practicing Buddhism isn't about worshiping a separate deity. It's simply practicing your own true nature. Seeing your essence is the act of becoming a Buddha.
It completely collapses the distance between the divine and the everyday. Like, there is no separation at all.
None whatsoever.
And I have to say, this is the part of the deep dive where I really found myself stopping and sort of pushing back against the text, mostly because it violently clashes with what we usually expect from spiritual writings.
Oh, how so? Walk us through that friction.
Well, think about almost every other major spiritual or philosophical tradition you've ever encountered. So often the ultimate goal is transcendence.
Escaping it all.
Right. You are taught that you need to overcome your base human nature. You're supposed to escape the physical world, detach from the material plane, defeat your desires, and achieve some higher, ethereal state of being that is totally removed from the messy reality of existence.
Right? Asceticism. It's the deeply ingrained idea that the flesh is a prison and enlightenment is the jailbreak.
Yes, exactly. But Xuefeng offers this striking, almost aggressive counterargument to that entire premise. He writes that because the entire universe is just a dance of nature, attempting to transcend your nature is fundamentally foolish.
And he uses this incredibly vivid, almost comical image for it, too.
Oh, I loved this part.
Yeah, he says trying to transcend nature is as ignorant as a person pulling their own hair to lift themselves off the ground.
It's just so funny, and it's a brilliant metaphor, honestly.
Because it defies the basic laws of physics. Just as trying to escape nature defies the basic laws of existence. You are made of the very thing you are trying to escape.
It's mechanically impossible.
It is. And if we look closely at how the author categorizes the people who fail to understand this, the implications are profound. He assigns very specific labels based on his 4 stages.
Okay, yeah.
If you cannot feel nature, if you fail at that Lemuria stage, you are described as ignorant. If you cannot understand or organize nature, the Atlantis stage, you are foolish. But the absolute harshest label is saved for the intellectual stage. If you fail to approach nature flexibly and dynamically, if you cannot reach spirituality, you are labeled barbaric.
Barbaric. I mean, that feels like a really strong word for someone who might just be like a scientist or a philosopher stuck in an intellectual phase of overthinking things. Why are they barbaric?
Because in this framework, over-intellectualizing is seen as a violent imposition of the human mind over the reality of the universe.
Oh, wow. I didn't think of it that way.
Yeah, when you force your theories, your rigid structures, and your dogmas onto the natural flow of life, you are acting barbarically toward nature. It asks you to completely change your definition of enlightenment.
So enlightenment isn't floating away on a cloud of detachment.
Exactly. It's about being perfectly seamlessly embedded in the reality of the world so that you stop fighting it.
Okay, but that brings up a massive practical question. If perfectly embedding yourself into nature is the goal, how does one actually practice this? What does that look like in reality, mechanically speaking?
To answer that, the text breaks down the mechanics of the universe into 3 essential elements. You have consciousness, which is characterized by the concept of Tao, or the way. You have structure, which is characterized by nature. And you have energy, which is characterized by love.
Okay, Tao, nature, love.
Yes. Therefore, according to the author, a practitioner must focus their cultivation strictly on those 3 things.
Right, but how do those 3 things actually interact? It sounds a bit abstract.
Think of it like an electrical circuit. Structure, which is nature, is the physical wiring.
Okay.
Energy, which is love, is the electrical current running through it. And consciousness, the Tao, is the switch or the guiding blueprint that dictates how it all flows.
Got it. So you need all 3.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You cannot have a functioning system with just one element. If you have love without structure, it just dissipates. If you have structure without the Tao, it's a dead wire. They must operate together to create harmony.
And the author claims he actually has proof that this circuit works in the real world, which is wild. He points to a physical community called the Second Home, established by his organization, Lifechanyuan.
Right.
He presents this as the tangible, living realization of the new era of spirituality.
And the way he describes this place, it is a literal, unblemished utopia.
It really is. Like, he claims that the people there live like celestial beings. There are absolutely no conflicts, no arguments, no intrigue, no suffering, no anxiety.
It sounds almost too perfect.
Well, he leans heavily into classic utopian tropes. He says no one pockets things they find dropped on the road and the doors are left unbolted at night. Everyone is just happy and perfectly free.
And the reason he claims this is possible is because the inhabitants have successfully passed through all those previous evolutionary stages. They've shed the baggage of rationality and intellectuality, and they are now living out their Tathagata nature.
Okay, let's define that term for the listener, because Tathagata is a pretty heavy piece of jargon.
It is. In traditional Buddhism, Tathagata is an honorific title for a Buddha, often translated as one who is thus gone or one who has thus come.
Right.
But in the context of Xuefeng's text, Living your Tathagata nature essentially means existing in a state of pure alignment with the Creator's will. You have no artificial friction. You are simply blooming where you were planted.
And here's where it gets really interesting. For you listening to bloom freely like that, you have to drop a lot of baggage.
Monumental amount.
Yeah. The text explicitly states that to live in this pure nature, humans must stop living within artificial constructs. And the list of constructs he demands we abandon is just staggering.
It's a comprehensive dismantling of human society as we know it today.
Seriously. He writes that people must completely abandon morality. They must abandon ethics and ideology. He says to let go of nation, religion, political party, family, and incredibly, even the concept of truth itself.
It leaves you with almost nothing to hold on to.
Nothing at all. You are supposed to let go of pursuing, possessing, and controlling, and instead, quote, bloom your own nature freely and timely like flowers.
He even brings back the Zen patriarch Xuefeng to back this up, quoting, "All phenomena are inseparable from one's own nature." Meaning, if you are truly connected to your essence, you literally do not need external rules to govern your behavior.
Okay, but as someone who lives in human society, I have to challenge this.
I figure you might.
I mean, how on earth does a community function with zero conflict, where you don't even have to lock your doors, if every single person in that society has abandoned foundational shared rules like morality and ethics?
It sounds counterintuitive.
Very. If everyone is just blooming freely without a shared concept of truth, doesn't that usually result in absolute chaos?
If we connect this to the bigger picture of the author's philosophy, the answer lies in his view of artificiality versus innate structure.
Okay, explain that.
Well, from his perspective, human morality, laws, and ethics are clumsy artificial constraints. They are leftovers from the Atlantis era. They're attempts to forcefully organize something that already possesses its own perfect internal order. The author believes that true harmony doesn't come from forced human rules. It comes from the Creator's will and our innate structure.
So relying on the concept of human morality is like trying to force a flower to bloom by physically grabbing the petals and pulling them open.
Precisely. That's a great way to look at it. If a flower has the right soil, the right sunlight, the right energy, which brings us back to nature, love, and Tao, it blooms harmoniously entirely on its own.
It doesn't need a legally binding rule book to tell it how to be a flower.
Exactly. The text argues that humans, when properly aligned with their spiritual nature, operate the exact same way. Conflict, crime, and suffering only arise when we try to force artificial structures onto that natural blooming.
It's an incredibly provocative vision, a society entirely devoid of the rule of law, held together purely by the spiritual alignment of its individuals, which naturally brings us to the architect of this vision. Who exactly is leading us into this new era?
The author, Xuefeng, addresses this directly, and he is entirely unambiguous about his role. He explicitly names himself as the guide for the human spirit and soul, offering a precise roadmap for this transition.
But the way he frames his leadership is really unique. Like, he actually tells the reader not to worry about his cosmic status.
Yeah, which is unusual for this kind of text.
Very. He says, it doesn't matter if you think I'm a messenger of the greatest creator or an incarnation of a Buddha or just a guiding spirit. Don't stress about the divine titles.
Instead, he asks for something much more intimate from the listener. He asks you to treat him simply as a soulmate and to communicate with him openly and honestly.
And he offers a very specific test for you to judge his legitimacy. He says, feel out the situation and see if I have any demands on you. If I am making demands of you, then I am a demon. But if I have no demands and I am only guiding you step by step to the very peak of life, why not take advantage of it?
And then he uses a phrase that is quite striking to find at the end of a dense spiritual text.
Yes. He says, why not do a business that only gains and never loses?
So jarring.
I found this tonal shift fascinating. For pages, we've been deep into Zen Buddhism, the 3 elements of the universe, and 37,000-year-old civilizations. And suddenly, he's using the language of a risk-free investment pitch.
This raises an important question, though, when you look closely at the final section of the text, because immediately after offering this supposedly no-pressure, risk-free business deal from a friendly soulmate who claims to have no demands, he delivers a very firm ultimatum.
He does. The tone shifts one last time. He tells the reader to face reality, discard hypocrisy, and not be hysterical. Live authentically and be yourself.
Now the warning.
Right. Otherwise, he warns, you will not enter the new human civilization, the Lifechanyuan era of spirituality. Now, I have to be honest here, and I'm sure you listening might be thinking the exact same thing. To modern ears, A charismatic leader saying, I have absolutely no demands on you, I'm just your soulmate. But if you don't follow my exact roadmap, you won't survive the coming era. Sounds like textbook manipulation.
It does.
It sounds like the kind of rhetoric you hear in high-control groups.
It is a profound paradox that the text asks the reader to accept. We can look at this rhetorical strategy objectively. You have a spiritual guide who insists he has zero demands, framing himself as a safe, demon-free companion.
Yep.
Yet simultaneously, he establishes a rigid, absolute boundary. The underlying message is that you must discard all your hypocrisy and act exactly according to his framework, or you will completely miss out on the ultimate evolution of humanity. It leverages the promise of absolute freedom against the threat of total exclusion.
It's a velvet glove, but there is undeniably an iron hand of certainty inside it. It's completely uncompromising.
Absolutely uncompromising. He presents this not as one option among many, but as the single viable path forward from the era of intellectuality into the era of spirituality.
So, what does this all mean for us today? We started this deep dive looking at the physical timeline of human history, the sharpened flint and the microchips, and we've traveled through a vastly different kind of landscape.
A purely psychological and spiritual one.
Right. We've journeyed from the sensory world of the lost continent of Lemuria through the rational organization of Atlantis, past our modern era of intellectual overthinking, and arrived at a proposed future where humanity sheds every artificial construct, our morality, our nations, our religions, to simply bloom like flowers in a state of flexible, dynamic nature.
It is a staggering reimagining of the human trajectory. And whether you view this text as a literal roadmap for a coming utopia or simply as a fascinating philosophical thought experiment, it really forces you to interrogate how you are interacting with the world right now.
Exactly. Even if we remain completely impartial about the author's grandest cosmic claims, and even if we're skeptical of his rhetorical ultimatums, there is undeniable power in the core message.
There's
The idea that trying to transcend our reality is as foolish as pulling our own hair to fly. The challenge to discard our own hypocrisy, to stop hiding behind artificial rules, and to try to live authentically in the present moment. That is a takeaway you can apply whether you're building a utopian second home or just trying to get through your morning commute.
It challenges you to stop over-intellectualizing your life and start flowing with it.
But it does leave us with one massive lingering question. We talked earlier about how chaotic it might be to drop all our shared rules, and I want you, the listener, to really mull this over on your own.
It's a big one.
If the ultimate evolution of human consciousness requires us to abandon all our manufactured human concepts, if we truly must let go of morality, nations, and even truth itself to simply exist exactly as we are, what happens to our shared sense of right and wrong during the messy transition period?
Right, because we aren't all blooming at the same speed.
Exactly. When 8 billion people are all trying to throw away the sheet music and bloom at the exact same time without a shared rulebook, is that the ultimate harmony? Or does the music just turn into noise?
A fascinating question to leave it on.
We started by saying we usually measure progress by the tools we leave behind in the dirt. Maybe the real question is whether we are ready to leave the tools behind entirely. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.